Hey guys, what's up? It's Audrey again, and welcome to part 4 of the 2D and 3D little mini series. Today I'm going to be covering kind of the most daunting part of it, at least for me it was, which is the 3D side of the 2D and 3D animation. I use Cinema4D. I think it was version 20. I just upgraded to S26 and trying to get the hang of that, but in this video this is R20. If you haven't already checked out the previous episodes where I covered the sketching and animatic making, 2D design, importing into After Effects stuff, be sure to watch all of that so you can kind of catch up and be along with the process. I'm sure if you watch all the previous ones, it'll make a lot more sense to see how we got to where we are now versus how we started. In this video, I'm not necessarily recording the actual process of me designing the 3D animation just because it took a little longer than I wanted it to, and I'm still learning how to model, so I didn't want to have to walk through all the troubleshooting and figuring things out as I went with you guys. But in this video, I'm just going to walk through my Cinema4D file and just kind of the mental process that I had to build the glass out. I'm also going to kind of briefly walk through importing those TIFFs from Cinema4D and like the exporting that I did at the end into After Effects, into the file that we set up on the previous episode with our design and everything. And I'll just kind of walk through how I kind of combined those 3D files in After Effects to be a little bit easier to animate when we get to that phase, and to meld a little easier with the composition. So I'm just going to quickly walk through the steps that I kind of went to get this final glass product that I'm going to use for the 2D design. So don't mind all of the things I kind of have going on over here. Really what I want to draw your attention to, I'm going to turn off the final model there and turn on the kind of the live working one that I started with to get that final product. So you can see it's a very pretty concise and nicely tidied up cocktail glass, which I'm pretty proud of. I'm not a modeler, kind of working on my skills right now, so this was a victory in itself, but I can kind of show you how I started this. So really it all started with the spline. I'll turn off everything else here so you can see it a little easier. So the spline's up here, but really what I was kind of doing was taking this bit here and knowing that I was going to use a lathe to wrap it fully around. I kind of forgot about this base part here in the sketch, but nonetheless I kind of figured it out. So in my mind, using the lathe and then using some capsule shapes and a cloner that went radially around kind of the circumference of the glass, and then it was going to kind of take that little bit of a chunk right there out wherever it was going to be placed, and then use a bowl. So there's quite a bit of things kind of going on here that's adding things, taking away things, but in my mind this was kind of the simplest way to go about it, and it ended up working. So obviously kind of thinking ahead on how you want to go about modeling a little bit of complex objects is a cool thing to do. I'll bring that opacity back down so you can see this better. So after I made this spline, I made it perfectly in half, and then I used a lathe modifier to fully bring it full circle, quite literally. So if I take that away again, and you can just see there's the spline, and then turning on the lathe, it just wraps it fully around. And you can obviously modify those settings, and then wanted the 360 degrees for it to fully wrap around, obviously. Added some subdivision, and that was pretty much all I needed to do there. And then the next bit I did was add a capsule. And so here obviously you can kind of mess with the settings here. I did a little bit of adjusting with like the height and just how many segments and stuff to kind of have a little bit smoother geometry. But obviously this wasn't going to deform the glass the way that I wanted it to, so I had to put it into a cloner, which you can see here. And then using like the top view, you can easily see, just wanted a little bit of those capsules to kind of inset into that bit of the glass there. So I was just messing with, obviously the mode being radial. The count, I just wanted to keep it even, so it was pretty symmetrical. I had to fix the plane to XZ, and then I think radius was really the main variable I kind of had to adjust, along with the capsule size too, just to get it where I wanted it to. And then I think after that, using the bool modifier and having A subtract B, because obviously the order of these objects and layers and everything matters, but having the main glass shape subtract the capsule shape is kind of what it's telling it to do here. How to do high quality. Something that I was trying to figure out and that was like whacking my brain about was once I had the bool do its thing, I got some really weird geometry here that I was not happy about and was really concerned about. Didn't really know what to do about it. I didn't want to have to go in and try to meld all of these new vertexes and stuff together, and literally with a click of a button, hiding new edges solved my problem. So that's kind of the thing with Cinema4D, especially if you're new to it. Just kind of tinkering around with the settings and just seeing what button does what can really help you in the long run and help you learn some new things. Something else too with using the bool modifier was to create a single object, because before it was looking like this and I didn't really totally know what that meant. And it was kind of looking funky in my renders and stuff, so just telling it to create one singular object to kind of meld all of those things together really made me feel at ease, so so be sure to do that. And then from there, just duplicated the live version of this so I could fix anything if I needed to or adjust anything, and then hit it. And then over here, I just pressed C and made it one live like object. So every point is editable, every face is editable, no turning back, that whole concept, but I figured it'd be easier to work with and messing with the rendering and the lighting and stuff. So here to kind of complete the look, I added in some lights here, added in a psych just for a little bit of background. I have Grayscale Gorillas Plus membership, so I get a lot of all of their materials and their resources and all that kind of stuff, so it made it super easy just to set up a quick scene, and I knew it was going to look kind of the way that I wanted it to, just for the sake of getting a 3D piece out. So in my mind, this is where it kind of really started to matter with getting the lighting and getting some of that glass refraction and color shifting kind of going on. I'll turn on the camera that I made for this and the lights and everything just to kind of show you where it kind of landed. So it's kind of rendering right now. And you can see in this render too, like it's not the prettiest composition or lighting by any means, and luckily that's not really what I'm trying to focus on here in Cinema4D. I really just wanted to focus on the object and make sure that for a base it was what I needed and it could function, and I just needed it to animate and just export and all that stuff. So here I also added a cylinder with kind of a custom material that was like more of a orange, kind of a see-through glass material, mostly just because I wanted it to get captured here in this like center part of the glass, get a little bit of refraction going on, just because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to totally accurately recreate that in After Effects, so I wanted to try and mimic that here. And obviously this is super sloppy, but again, this is kind of the initial thought process I had for everything, and it ended up working out pretty well. So sometimes you kind of have to do some weird methods just to see if something will work, and you learn a lot from just doing that, honestly. So from here, I have my camera set up, and all I wanted to do was just to manipulate the rotation of this. I wasn't gonna try and mimic what the hand motion was going to be to pick it up, take it out of frame, and then bring it back in, because we still haven't animated the hand yet, and that was just going to be a lot of trying to match everything together, and it just sounded like a headache. So all I really wanted to capture was that slight rotation of when the glass was picked up. Just wanted to change the shading here real quick so you can see this a little bit better. But referencing my animatic that I made in After Effects, I took the amount of frames that the composition was. I tried to roughly match up where the hand officially took the glass off of the invisible table, and where it might have started to start rotating. So you can see that most of the animation is at rest. Then the hand picks it up, takes it out of frame, and you can see it kind of like abruptly kind of just ends here. I'll extend the timeline a little bit just to see if there was anything else, but I'm pretty sure it just loops back. So it loops back to the original state. And in my mind, I knew I wasn't going to need to render out every single frame, because most of these frames is just it being still. And there's no other animation going on. There's no camera movements, there's no lights moving or anything. And I didn't want to waste a bunch of time for these frames to render that I wasn't really going to end up using anyway. So I think that's why ultimately I kind of just I just figured out where I needed a couple frames of still. I think it was at like 72 or something, 72 to like 90 something, just to get this little bit of animation here, because I can just put a hold keyframe beforehand and make that static, and then when it's out of frame I can make that static as well, so I can manipulate that stuff afterward. But I really just wanted to get some quick exports of just the main frames that are animating here. And the way that I did that, if I went into my render settings, so I saved it out as a TIFF, a 16-bit channel, and I actually too, with one of the renders, I actually had it do an alpha channel pass as well. You'll see why here in After Effects in a bit, why I did that. It was ultimately to be able to cut out all of the background that I knew I wasn't going to be using in the final design. Just wanted the cutout essentially of the glass, so I could get the orange refraction and all that stuff in there without everything else. And then my output, I did the same exact file size as I have with everything else, 1080 by 1350, 72 dpi, frame rate is 24, and then I just had it select the like 20 some frames that I ended up using. So this is what it ended up rendering out to be, and obviously it is not by any means the prettiest render I've ever done or ever will do, but I really wanted to take a minute to evaluate and just really look at the glass and like kind of the noise I have going on around here, the refraction and all that stuff, just to make sure and see like, is this something I can work with? I was definitely a little concerned at first, but I went ahead and tried a little bit of a test just to see if everything that I thought about was going to make sense and if it was gonna actually be something to work with at all. And you'd be surprised just like what little tune-ups and little bit of work you can do to clean up something that doesn't start out as pretty, but it can have a really nice evolution. And then here's an example of the alpha pass that it took, along with the actual renders themselves. So the black will cut everything out, and then white will retain whatever image is there. So I was pretty happy with this, and luckily it matched up perfectly. So I was going to be able to work with that pretty well. And then this is an example of a glass render that I did without a lot of lighting. I don't think I had a cyc in there for some background, and I definitely didn't have the orange bit going on in the background to kind of give that refraction and everything. So this was me just rendering it out on an alpha channel just to see how it would look cut out. And this is kind of where I decided to take a couple other passes before I did the render that I just showed. Now I'm also going to add in the 3D renders and the alpha channel bits that I did before as well. I'm just going to make a new folder called 3D just for that stuff. So I'm just mentioning this because I have the window on my other screen here, but I'm importing all of the TIFFs individually instead of a TIFF sequence, just because I want to manipulate the individual TIFFs on their own to kind of fit that animatic. So that's what I'm doing there. Basically just make sure that the TIFF sequence box is not checked, and just import all those individual files, and you'll see here in a second. So now I'm gonna make an individual pre-composition for both the alpha channel and the renders. So I'm just gonna right click on the folder and new comp from selection. All that stuff looks good. And then there's the pre-comp. It has all those images in there. I'm going to do the same thing for the alpha channel. I want to keep my files pretty organized, so I am going to make sure all my pre-comps end in the pre-comp folder. And I'm going to rename these, I think. So this is glass alpha. This is just glass render. Okay. Alright, so we got our timeline at 8 seconds. And what we want to do here is kind of mimic the animatic and kind of assume where the rotation might kind of start. I'm gonna sequence the layers out here, so I'm gonna make this all, each of these one frame. Shift Control D to separate those, and then I'll just go top to bottom, keyframe assistant, and sequence layers. So now it does that little bit of animation there. And so what we're going to kind of do is we're going to throw in the animatic, and then we're going to kind of stretch and pull some of these individual layers here just to kind of mimic the timing. So I just imported the previous After Effects file that had the animatic in it just so we can pull from it directly. So there's the animatic that we did before. And so here I kind of just want to scrub through and see, so the hand starts to make contact with the glass here, but it's not fully grabbed yet. And once it's grabbed, kind of just see when it starts to lift off the ground when that might start rotating. And I think here at like 304 is a good spot. So I'm going to select all of these keyframes here and move them over just for now. I'm going to drag this first one all the way to 304 because that is when it's static up until that point. So I'm going to lower the opacity on the animatic a little bit just so we can kind of see our glass a little bit easier. You can kind of see the hand. So the glass is static up to that point. And then right from there, all these other layers when it starts animating. So it's animating, it's rotating as it's being pulled away. And then it's gonna hold. It's going to hold off camera for a bit. With this last layer, I'm gonna extend it out. It's kind of looking like a little staircase. So this is when it's gonna be off camera, and we're gonna animate the glass on its own here, but we just wanna get the timing of rotation right. Okay, so glass is off screen now, and then I wanna see when that glass starts to kind of come back in. About 5:13-ish. And you wanna kind of assume that the glass is just going to kind of reflect and kind of mirror what it did in the first place. So ends like this, and it's just gonna it's gonna move backwards. So I'm just gonna take this staircase chunk of animation, go from bottom to top this time, copy that, and then paste that. I'm gonna move this down just to keep things a little more linear and organized. I want to make sure that the right frames are, yeah, see, that's wrong already. So instead of moving each of these back and kind of reversing this staircase here, I'm just gonna maybe go top to bottom this time. Keyframe assistant, sequence layers, hit OK, and there we go. It should sequence that out properly. It's interesting how the order of which you select layers can affect how it's sequenced, but all good things to know. Okay, so yeah, here it starts to move back exactly where the resting position was. And I'm actually going to extend this bit here. I think that happens too fast. It's not off camera long enough. So I think we're going to move that over here to 5 seconds and 13 frames. Just see how that works. So it has a little bit more time in off camera. And that's the nice thing too, is like in this bar right here is essentially determining how long that glass is off frame. So again, just that matter of having the control to determine the timing of everything is super nice to have. So then I think here is when we can just extend the rest of that out. Got a little staircase going. So let's see how this looks real quick. Glass is taken, it's off camera, and set back down. And then it just loops. Now I know the timing is kind of weird with the animatic and the frame by frame hand coming in and out and stuff, but again, it's more just for reference. It's not super literal right now, but just good to know. Okay, so we have the timing there. And what we want to do now is create our alpha channel pre-comp that mirrors this exactly, so that it cuts out every bit of the background and everything appropriately. So I'm going to delete the animatic. We don't need that anymore. And just kind of want to keep in mind the timing of all of these frames here, and we'll just kind of copy that. So 304, 401, 513, and 609. We'll go to the glass alpha pre-comp here, kind of do the same thing we did before, cut it at 1 frame. We'll sequence the layers out. So you can already see it mimics that animation a little bit. And then we'll just look at our time codes. So 304 is for that first frame. And 401 is where this one will be extended out to 513. And then here we're going to copy the layers here and go from bottom to top. And then just drag out this last one. So it should completely mimic what we did with the render version. Awesome. So now we have our alpha. And if we just go into our main comp here and just quickly throw those two pre-comps in. So you want to have the alpha on top, and then with the track matte on the glass render, I'm going to do Luma matte. And look, it is completely cut out. Look how nice that looks. I mean, that's so much better than what we had. And it's perfect. Like the animation mirrors each other perfectly. We don't have to worry about keying anything out in After Effects. You get that refraction, you get all the movement there, even though it's super subtle. So I'm super happy with that. A full disclaimer, this is not the cleanest process. This is not the most professional process by any means. Again, this is just the method that I thought was the easiest for me to go about it and with my skill set. Certainly a beginner level, but nonetheless still got the job done. So don't limit yourself. Don't think that any method is too crazy or too unorthodox to get the job done for a personal project especially. So quick note about the tools and stuff that I was using for the Cinema4D portion. I want to reiterate that you don't have to have the latest and greatest Cinema4D version to do this. I didn't. I had R20, but really, again, this is just some basic modeling stuff that you should be able to use with pretty much any version of Cinema4D or in Blender, whatever your program of choice is. I was also using Redshift as well, and I was using a couple of the Grayscale Gorilla Plus membership stuff. By no means do you have to have all of these things. I kind of spoiled myself a little bit with the 3D third-party renderer and the Grayscale Gorilla resources just because they're great and I love working with them and learning how they work and stuff. You can do this with Blender, Maya, whatever your 3D program of choice is. You can use your native renderer. You don't have to have a third party. Really just depends on the look that you're going for, and for this purpose it truly was just more for the model's sake, not so much the materials and lighting and super high def, high res looking stuff. And in terms of materials, you can pretty much recreate any of these materials in Cinema4D with or without Redshift. But just a disclaimer there, you don't have to have all the latest and greatest tools to accomplish something like this. So thank you guys for watching. I hope this was helpful, as always. And a huge thank you to those that are sticking around and watching these videos in its prime infancy, and me trying to figure out YouTube and trying to figure out how I want to go about these videos and just how to make them better, and all the words of encouragement. It means so much. I truly appreciate all of you. That being said, I still welcome any and all ideas for future videos, things that aren't out there, especially stuff that I know I feel like I'm missing when I'm looking for design content and stuff like that helps me in my skill set. If I can provide that for other designers out there, that would be amazing. So don't be shy. Be sure to keep an eye out for the next episode where I will actually start to animate. I know, it's taken 4 or 5 episodes to finally get to that point, but nonetheless, we are almost there. Thank you guys again for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.